Next finish we're going to demonstrate is stone mist. Ceramicized aggregate in a clear matrix. The finish requires a color-coordinated color prime regardless of which application process. You can either trowel it 100%, trowel it smooth. You can trowel and spray into it, or you can spray it 100%. Now let's start with the first one. Typically, when you're trowel applying it, it's basically corridors or areas where you want a really durable material. You can take a quarter. We'll give Al just a second. Sorry about that. So it's a really durable product, but just recognize if you have, let's say we're going to trowel it over the top of this block. Guess what it's going to ghost? Anything that's there on the substrate. So in other words, if you're not familiar with doing white coat, it's the exact same process if you're going to trowel it smooth. You're going to have to lay that trowel flat, otherwise you're going to have trowel marks. You're going to have chatter marks where you put the trowel up on edge instead of holding it flat. Second process is if you trowel the first coat, getting it down nice and smooth, then spray into it, it increases your coverage because you don't have the bounce back of just 100% spraying it. But again, you can't have any trowel marks or chatter marks when you spray over the top of it, because when you do, they're still there. Otherwise, you can actually just spray apply it. 75% first coat, 25% second coat. So what we actually have, one example of a piece of equipment, probably the most common, is just your typical hopper gun. Typical hopper gun. This is a little bit different one, but this one's got interchangeable orifice tips. Generally for stone mist, I typically like the 5/16. If we're going to do Maristone, the tip size should be 3/8, just because the different size and the shape. So this is just interchangeable. Obviously pre-color prime the wall as we've done. Generally I like to have an inline air regulator. Even though there's one on the compressor, I like one right here. And we typically will set that for our spray pattern. This is the first time we've used this one, so we'll just have to play with it a little bit. It's also got a control where it controls the needle. So if I put a 3/8 inch orifice in, this needs to be set where that tip is 3/8 of an inch away from the back side once the trigger is completely compressed. Okay? Whatever the size of the tip, that's the distance once it's compressed completely that it should be back away, and all you do is adjust this. Okay? If it's a Marshalltown Goldblatt, all you got to do is pick the 5/16 and it's already predetermined. You can't change that. But if we control the air with an inline air regulator, then we can control our pattern. And once we get it, then you can set it and it doesn't change. When you hold the hopper gun, you'll see us when we spray. Just think of holding that all day long with that weight in there. Cant the hopper gun and hold it just like this. Now, think in terms of when you spray. You've seen someone spray, they'll go up and they'll spray just like this. Okay? So if you look at that spray pattern, which we'll demonstrate here in a second, you'll have heavy material and then you'll have light material. When you overlap, if you don't take the light just right exactly over the light, then you've got light over heavy. Guess what? You'll always see it. Well, let's say if we spray like this in that same pattern. So we start in a circle. Guess what? It takes away the light and the heavy. So you always spray with a hopper gun, even if you're going to do a popcorn texture. Just can it. And it's always spray in a circle. It'll also get more material on the wall. And it'll eliminate reading those heavy and light spray areas. Huge tip. Always in a circular motion. Okay? The pressure, it's a starting point, so you look at the product data sheet and it'll say if it says 20. Don't be concerned about if it's 15 or it's 30. I can show you 5 different hopper guns with the compressor, and the gauge says 30, or it says 25. What if the gauge is damaged? So once you get it set, then basically you leave it. All it is just a reference tool, and then you've got to adjust it from there. What's your hopper gun to start with? Get some clean water here. Let's use some. Always put some lubrication, some water in there. And before you spray on the wall, I've got that piece of cardboard just for that. Get you a piece of cardboard. Mesh box is good to use. And test spray on the cardboard prior to spraying on the wall surface. We're going to be kind of tight. See if we can get point there. I guess that's all we have. It's going to be kind of tough to reach that. Go ahead and we'll make it work. You can pull just a little bit more, Carmine, where I can get 2 or 3 feet. So just like on this one, there's a air regulation gauge. So in other words, when I open that wide open, it's obviously way too high a pressure, right? So then you just keep adjusting down. Huh? Might need a little more water. So just like when you see right now, it's on the verge where it needs a touch more water, so it'll flow a little bit better. But your gauge, and that's the other reason why I like to leave this wide open and then control it with a gauge that I can lock in. What happens if I bump this when I'm spraying it? Then it's changed my pattern. And so generally what you do is when you measure the amount of water that you're going to add, let's say if it's 4 to 8 ounces, then every pail, if you put 4 ounces in, every pail gets the exact same amount of water in it. Keep in mind that for stone mist, the color is achieved by the ceramicized stone. The matrix is clear, even though it appears white when it goes on. Typically, as you're spraying, you're going to use like a mesh box, and whoever your partner is that you're working with, they can shade the other areas that have been previously sprayed. Always spray with the wind. Let's see if we're spraying outside, and where we're from, it's always windy. You almost actually have to tint the scaffold. So if I'm anticipating working off of a scissor lift and the wind's blowing all the time, you're always going to have a problem, right? So you basically got to build scaffold, tarp it in, and then work with that. But ultimately, when I spray one panel, I don't want to get it on the other one, so we'll spray it, but then just hold a shield there so we don't get the overspray on it. Fill me up now with a bunch. You trying to get us some more? Go ahead. So again, just hold it. If you're right-handed, just hold the hopper in your left hand and just can it, and then go ahead and spray it. I think they're working on just a little bit more hose for me, but it's better. But you can see that it's real close as it relates to that. We get just a little more. I just can't quite reach that panel. Well, I've got to be able to reach that and then down there, right? And then the binks. But ultimately, it's pretty simplistic. But again, the real tip is just kind of can it, hold it with your both hands, so that you don't get tired and you keep the same spray pattern. Good? Thank you. I want to hold that up on that brick. Think in terms when you start to spray a panel, if that's your full spray pattern, you're going to start up here to get your full spray pattern or your full spray pattern across that surface. Now, the question is that one coat? No, it's not. One coat consists of a horizontal pass and then a vertical pass. In other words, a crosshatch. So then you take the same spray pattern. Ready? The purpose of the color prime, most people associate that with read-through. All your goal is if you color prime it, you just want to put texture on. That's it. You're not wanting to paint it. And so what most people will do when they start to spray, look at my distance away from the wall. If I start spraying out here, you see very little material. So everybody will have a tendency to do this. Guess what? You'll always read it. The front of that hopper gun should never be closer than 16 inches to the wall surface. All you're wanting to do is apply texture. You're not trying to color it. It's already done. Okay? Any questions about stone mist?
Misty, John.
Say again? It's going to depend upon which of the three that you go. So that's going to range anywhere from 75 to, let's say, 110 to 120. That's why it's critical with this. Your maximum coverage is probably going to be with this particular application here. The secret, just like when you look at it, there's no trowel marks or that chatter mark where that trowel's up on edge. Trowel's like this. And then you can just spray into it and move on. Okay? So again, the guy that's actually troweling the first coat is the key.